Hello, happy Sunday, everyone. It's 2 o'clock. We're very excited for this FB Live. Let's just wait for some people to join in. Napaka-excited. Excited po ako sa FB Live natin ngayon because ever since we started the page or ever since we've had many followers, the issue about special needs has always been brought up in the messages, in the comments. Alam niyo po, 2 taon tayong nag-lockdown. So, there are some behaviors of children that we may think is a special need. Yung pala, it's really just brought about by being at home for 2 years during a very crucial developmental stage. And marami pong nako-confuse na either magulang or teacher or lolo't lola sa behavior ng mga anak or mga estudyante. So, we invite everybody. I'm so excited for teachers. Alam nyo po, if I announced this before, no, there are some teachers who watch the lives together with other teachers as part of their training. And I'm so blessed to have heard that. But today is a special day for all of us because one of the best developmental behavioral pediatrician in the country has said yes to our invitation so that we can ask her questions. We can help each other out on ano ba talaga ano ba talaga ang special needs, ano ang learning disability, at ano ang mga kailangan nating i-observe sa ating estudyante or mga anak. Para malaman natin kung special need ba ito or just part of a developmental stage. So I'd like to welcome everybody. We have people from Saudi Arabia. I had a message earlier that they watch all the way from the US, and yung mga videos na they're Filipino teachers in the US that they are learning a lot from our page, and I'm so happy that the page has been blessing you, and I pray that wherever the Lord has planted you, you have blessed more children. Okay, so our guest today, before I put her on stage, is Dr. Sheryl Kho Bunagan. She's a developmental behavioral pediatrician. She's a mom to 3 happy and energetic boys. Alam mo, natutuwa ako pag ang description yung unang-una yung mga anak eh. Dr. Sheryl has worked with various cultures and has met people from different walks of life. Her experience has given her diverse perspectives in child development and behavior, which has influenced her practice. She strongly believes that the child's parents or caregivers are the main influencers in their child's life. I agree. In her free time, she enjoys reading, being in nature, and spending time with her family. Her clinic is in St. Luke's Medical Center in Quezon City, and then I'm going to put her details on the page. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Sheryl Kho Bunagan. Hi, Doc Sheryl.
Hello. Good afternoon, Teacher Tina, and good afternoon to all the viewers, all the
Yeah,
teachers I saw, and
we have teachers, we have
parents.
parents, we have people from Thailand, from Saudi Arabia, from all the way from Las Piñas. Sa atin malayo na ang Las Piñas. May Taytay
Yes.
Rizal. Please tell us where you're coming from, and then if you have questions, please put it on the comments so that Dr. Sheryl and I can read it, and so we can try to answer it together. So Doc Sheryl, I'll start na since I only, ang utang ko kay Doc Sheryl, 1 hour lang eh. So wag tayo mag-overextend kasi it's a Sunday, and she graciously agreed to be with us on a Sunday. Okay, so Doc Sheryl, I lined up 4 questions for you first to start it. But as parents, a lot of followers have messaged or have commented. They're being told by their teachers to have their children checked. It's a very vague statement because they cannot sit still in class. So ano ba talaga yun, Doc Sheryl? Parang, what are the things, first of all, the teachers should figure out before they even ask a parent to have their child checked by a developmental pediatrician?
So I guess I'll answer it in 2 ways. One
Mhm.
is advice for parents, and the other one is my advice for teachers.
Yes,
So
that's great.
to advise parents, so that it depends on, of course, first, I need to know, or you have to look at your child's age, because the
Mhm.
younger they are, our early education or mga play schools, they start sometimes as early as 1.5 or 2 years
That's
old,
true.
and then maybe we'll discuss up until the school age, no? So the older
Yes,
the
yes.
child gets, they also become more developed, diba? They learn to speak better, they learn to understand better. The same goes for their attention span and their sitting span. So when you're a
Yes.
2-year-old, that's normally our terrible twos, where they
Mhm.
really assert themselves and they want to do things on their own, and you frequently hear their favorite word is no. Diba? When they're two, ayaw nilang sumunod.
Kaya sila
And so
terrible kasi yun ang favorite word
or
nila.
I would rephrase it to terrific twos.
To
So
terrific twos, oo. Tama.
yes, so that's where you're kind of getting to know their personality also, and that's where also, in terms of their speech development and their yung understanding of instructions, meron na silang naiintindihan, not so complex yet. So maybe may 1 to 2 step instructions, simple, like sit
Mhm.
down, come here, give it to me, stop, di ba? Yung mga simple instructions. So in the early childhood age, I would say between 2 to 4 years of age, we can expect that they're not going to be able to sit for 30
Agree.
minutes
I
or
I
sit
I'm
up to
glad
an
that you
hour.
mentioned ano, I'm glad that you mentioned the sitting, aside from the attention, it's the sitting, how did you call it, Doc?
Sitting span,
Sitting span.
how
Aside
long
from
they're
attention
sitting, or
span,
how,
there's sitting
yes,
span. Yeah. Mhm.
yes. Correct, because the other one is your thinking, your brain, right? That's your attention span. And then your sitting span is your physical. Like, can you actually sit down and follow and inhibit yourself from standing up and moving around? So when they're young, between
Correct.
2 to 4 years of age, of course, the older the child, the more they're towards 4 years of age, you can expect they can probably sit a little bit longer than the 2-year-olds. So what is a common attention span, right? How long can they attend for? Of course, they can really attend very well to their preferred activities, diba? Kasi they like it.
Mhm.
So their attention span can last from 2 to 5 minutes. They like the activity. But if it's something a little bit tedious, like for example, coloring, like all these fine motor activities, we
Correct.
also know that
Writing. Yeah.
developmentally, these children who are just trying to figure out how to be more how to have more dexterity with their fingers, able to sustain their sitting and their attention span for a period that is
Mhm.
kind of complex, right? In some ways, it's difficult. It's not just sitting and focusing. Medyo frustrated agad yung mga ito, and they might stand up. They might leave
Oh,
their chair
okay.
or lose focus. These are
Yes.
the 2 to 4 year olds when the goal of sending them to play school at the time is just to introduce pre-writing activities, to strengthen their fine motor activities. So we cannot expect that a 3-year-old will be able to write really well. Maybe they will grasp
How
it
about
this
ano,
way,
Doc?
or they will somehow switch
Yeah,
path
there.
right or left.
Right. That's why we had to come up with a writing video because we wanted to explain the process. Because it's really a process, di ba, Doc? It's not just, oh, ito magsulat ka na, and then you didn't prepare them for the load of writing that they're
Yes,
going to do, no?
correct.
And that's the reason why a lot of messages are coming from the kindergarten level, where these are 5-year-olds kasi, Doc Cheryl, na they are already expected to sit down for a certain period, a long period of time, um, and write a lot of things for their age. What can you say about it? Sometimes our internet is
Yes.
breaking up, but I hope later on we can summarize everything that we say. But what can you say about that, Doc, for kindergarten level up to siguro mga grade 2 since you already discussed preschool? How about the lower grades?
Yeah. The lower grades, of course, they should be able to develop a better grip of their pencil, better control
Mm-hmm.
of their pencil as well. In kindergarten, they can start tracing, not just tracing, but sometimes creating letters na on their own from
Yeah.
memory or even by copying. It gets
Yeah.
better as they grow, a little bit older. They probably can sustain writing tasks, one, maximum 2 pages, na yung red, blue line, but it's not
Yeah.
going to be, easy for them to copy 5 pages in one sitting, for example. And that's why the
Ah.
movement breaks as well. And just to go back to the little kids muna, no? Di ba
Yeah.
in preschools, we have a routine where the activities don't last more than 15 minutes because somehow they will
Mahaba na
need,
nga yun eh. Yeah.
correct, they will need to stand up and move. And so there's variety of activities. When they move to kindergarten, the subjects are a little bit longer because as a 5-year-old kindergarten student, you should be able to sit a little bit longer, focus a little bit better on the subject that lasts maybe about 30 minutes or 40 minutes. And in between that one subject, there's different activities pa rin to break down
Yes.
the para hindi monotonous yung activity and interactive. So,
Correct.
nai-incorporate yung movement pa rin. So, we avoid the kids who are just suddenly standing up.
So the
So,
expectation sometimes, Doc, na hindi nakakatapos magsulat may also be that the load being given to them is too long or too heavy
it
for
could
that
be that,
age.
yes, definitely. Number two, maybe the time. Maybe they're just given 5 minutes to finish,
Yeah.
what's on the board. So, sometimes we have to also consider like what are the environmental things happening, sometimes
Yes.
hindi especially if bago yung student, they don't know yet what to do. And that's why they're especially in the beginning of the school year, yung mga ating kids na hindi pa masyadong magaling magsulat, tapos ayun na, nagkokopya na sila kailangan. So sometimes we also have to
Oo nga eh.
observe, 'di ba? See, baka mamaya may fine motor delays pala. Maybe that's the reason why they can't grip and write as fast as their peers. We do have to admit there are kids who are really good at writing immediately. They really get it. So, and I think that's the developmental differences of kids.
I think rin kasi, Doc, the comparison is being made to those children who write good already, when in fact it's just a smaller percentage than those that need a little help pa with their fine
Correct.
motor skills.
Correct. Yes. And
So,
practice.
nadja-judge na yung the average. Yung, kunyari, yung po yung weakness niya, maiba naman po siyang strengths. Pero if, doon na siya nadja-judge on the way he writes or the speed, the speed of which he writes, nalilabel na yung bata na either
Correct.
tamad, magsulat, diba? Or hindi
Correct.
kaya. Okay.
Correct.
Thanks for
So
that. I also
yeah.
appreciate, Doc, what you said about giving children breaks, especially the young ones, because nga they cannot be expected to sit down for X number of minutes and not break that and release some energy before going back to their task. So yung
Correct.
breaks very important.
And the breaks
Paano
can
po,
be
Doc?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes. As
The
simple
breaks
as
can
what,
be as
Doc?
simple as singing, yung mga action songs.
Yes! Gustong-gusto
Yun.
nila yon.
Yan, they love that.
But Doc Sheryl, what are the red flags naman? So we've talked about developmental stages of preschool to, let's say, lower grades. What for you is like an alarm that, parang kailangan natin siyang tingnan?
Correct. Okay. So then you would look at the child's parang abilities, right? Is the child able to speak and communicate? That's typical for their age. So that's where the developmental milestones come in. And this is
Yes.
our parang information for parents and for everybody so that we can gauge whether the child is developing well. Kumbaga, it's our checklist, parang ganon. Is he doing well? And we can also see, based on different developmental domains, which areas they're good in and the areas of weaknesses. And so some red flags would definitely be, for example, in the socio-emotional domain, lack of eye contact, or has trouble socializing and engaging with their peers, no? We're humans naman, and we're very sociable. So as early as 1 to 2 years of age, we already can recognize our name, we recognize our
Yes.
parents. So that's one red flag, I would say, especially in the social emotional domain, not responding and not limited interactions.
And not
Um,
having a stranger danger. Parang,
that
'di ba, yun, actually, sa preschoolers namin, Doc, parang yun ang worry ko pag madali siya masyadong sumama sa
yeah,
stranger. Oo.
correct. It can be both ways, right? It's the
Yes,
stranger anxiety and then this lack of stranger
trust.
parang recognition and
Yes,
trusting
yes,
somebody easily.
yes, yes,
So
yes.
those are mga concerns. Of course, no, later we'll talk about what we need to do for these concerns. Of course, with
Yes.
speech and language, if the child is has limited verbal abilities, not really
Mhm.
able to speak well, and for example, expectedly at around 3 years of age, they should be speaking in short sentences, and the child
Mhm.
has trouble pronouncing or sometimes paisa-isa lang yung words. The
Mhm.
other important aspect of red flags is parang hindi nakakaintindi ng instructions
Kahit simple.
kahit simple. Or maybe ang naiintindihan is just the very familiar, like sit down, but has trouble
Mhm.
comprehending other instructions. And then, of
Mhm.
course, because they're preschoolers, the young ones, they're very movement oriented. If you can see their physical abilities are a little bit, clumsy, or they're not as great
Hmm.
as jumping, or sometimes they're scared to go on the slide, or sometimes yung iba, they can't go up coordinating their body.
Yes,
So
yes,
those
yes.
can be mga red flags. So it really is a holistic observation of the child, because there might be some aspects he's fine and there might be other aspects na medyo need ng help.
It's
So you
nice
have
you
to look
said
at the
that, Doc,
child.
kasi we always say that a child has different domains, and what you're saying is that all those domains are connected to one another. So kung merong red flag for certain, let's say, cognitive or comprehension, affected rin sometimes yung physical niya, yung gross motor
Yes.
niya. So you observe. And the universality of that, Doc, do you also agree that when you see it present in all the places or every time or lahat ng lugar kung saan ang bata. Like, you don't just see it in school, you also see it at home. Do you also agree with that na ganun
I,
dapat ka-universal yung red flag, or it can be a red flag only in school or at home?
so, there are only majority of the time there are two places the child spends most of their
Yes.
time in. So it has to be something that is observed by majority or a lot of people who spend a lot of time with the child. So the teachers definitely, but more importantly at home as well. So when teachers observe or parents observe these kinds of concerns, it's important to communicate that with the teacher and the parent, to be able
Mhm.
to monitor. Teacher, do you really observe? Kasi po, I'm concerned, for example, he's not following instructions. Do you see
Mhm.
that in school? Because
Yes.
sometimes, baka naman nasa mood lang yung bata na ayaw niya makinig, and they're kids, so we cannot expect them to always be in their best behavior. And so, we have to give it some time and really observe and parang be detailed about, okay, what situation is he doing this? What's happening right now? Is it because he didn't sleep last night? That's why he's doing this. So there has to be information gathering over a length of time. It cannot
Oh,
just be something that's 2 days, ganon, or one day.
that's nice of you to say that, medyo naka-sigh of relief ako dyan, because what we've been telling other parents is that when they send messages na, their teacher told them first day of school, third day of school, na to have them checked already. I think Doc Cheryl has already mentioned na kailangan yung observational log ng teacher medyo comprehensive. And what's nice also with what you said, Doc, is yung collaboration ng family, ng home and school, na kailangan nag-uusap sila lagi, na nagko-compare notes para pareho sila on the same playing field, kumbaga, or the
Correct.
same goals that you have with your child. Ito yung ginagawa niya. Because alam mo, Doc, meron akong student before. We thought, we were having verbal skills issues sa kanya kasi never nagsasalita sa bahay. Until the initial PTC na pinakitaan kami ng video na ang dal-dal-dal-dal, ay akala namin na hindi siya nagsasalita sa school. Tapos pinakitaan kami ng mom na ang dal-dal-dal-dal sa bahay. So parang ano sa amin yon, it was an opportunity for us to reset our individual goals for that child. So ini-encourage namin siyang mag-dyad with a classmate. Baka kasi parang ano lang siya, na kaka-anxiety lang siya over the group kasi madaming mga bata, ganyan. So it's nice that you said that. Doc, I'll just go through some of the questions before we go to the next segment or the next issue that we're talking about. So thank you from Butuan City, from CDO, Caloocan, Sorsogon, Eastern Samar. Wow. And thank you for tagging people from Pangasinan and so that they can join in. But I'll just look for a question. Ito, sige, I'll show this already because I think, Doc, ang anak ko po na-diagnose ng ASD, Autism Spectrum Disorder. Paranormal lang po siya. Maayos naman po siya sa paglalakad, pero may nakita talaga po kami na iba. Tsaka po parang bulol po siya magsalita. Nahihirapan na mag-speak ng ibang words. So I'm guessing with her case, Doc, na-diagnose na siya with ASD. So is there an issue, let's say, Doc, that you diagnosed a child with ASD and yet that the parent will say, parang okay naman siya?
Well, there might be
Sige lang,
there might
Doc,
be some cases that way, but I would say it really depends on also the doctor's observation as well of the child and the parent's observation. So autism kasi it's not a physical problem, right? They always they have perfect physical appearance, and so they have good physical skills sometimes. And most of the time, actually, they're very good at moving around. And so, autism is really, it's the quality of their social interactions and the way they communicate doon sa mga tao na nakapaligid sa kanya and paano siya makipag-interact sa ibang kids. And so, some of them, minsan nabubulol talaga. Yung iba, fluent naman magsalita, but they just don't know how to engage in conversation. There are some cases na, parang functioning naman, okay naman. But sometimes, there are still subtle signs of social interaction difficulties. Kaya, nadadiagnose po ng autism yung bata. Pero hindi po kasi siya based sa itsura.
Yes. Also, the fact that you went to a developmental pediatrician to have him diagnosed, there might be something that you've already observed. That's the reason why you went, no?
Correct.
And Mommy, I'm sure Doc has also seen a lot of parents na it's not a good feeling when your child is diagnosed. And sometimes you really want to hope for the best, diba? Pero I'm sure Doc will agree with me that for me as a teacher and for Doc as a developmental behavioral pediatrician, we appreciate the label so that we'll know the solution to the problem. So sometimes it's hard to accept a certain label. Pero Doc, diba, they're also free to get a second opinion if they're really not comfortable with the diagnosis.
Definitely. Yes, and sometimes it takes a few doctors to be able to understand, kaya pala talaga. Or sometimes it just is time for the parent to really process, okay. And then sometimes over time talaga, you can really understand better how your child is behaving.
Yes. Okay, I appreciate the questions. Lagyan niyo po ng age kasi as Doc Sheryl also said, no? Age is critical when you're asking a question about your child. Because, for example, if you say that a 1-year-old is throwing a violent tantrum, I'm sure Dr. Sheryl will say that's their favorite hobby, tantrums at 1-year-old. But if you're going to tell me that your 10-year-old is having a violent tantrum, medyo mag-iisip na kami ni Doc Sheryl na bakit nag-violent tantrum pa ang 10-year-old, diba? So I appreciate those. Like this one, Teacher and Doc, ang son ko po ay 4 years old, currently enrolled in daycare, public daycare, limited language siya, hindi mo siya makausap, kahit simple yes or no question lang po. What can you suggest? So for those who have comprehension issues naman, Doc, what can you suggest?
Well, actually, this one raises other concerns. So yung mga red flags na we talked about earlier, this case is actually may mga multiple red flags. There are some, of course, mom's question is, kind of limited, but
Yes, yes.
I would suggest for your son's case, Mommy Dindi, is to get
Mhm.
a full developmental assessment because there are certain other areas pa po na need namin malaman. Aside from
Yan.
yung napapansin ninyo minsan kasi puro speech lang, but there might be other things na we could ask
Yes.
you in detail.
Yes, I really push a developmental diagnosis. Kasi po, ang teacher, for example, kahit yung daycare worker, we're not doctors. We would want the doctor to be able to diagnose because we cannot. Sometimes a teacher can be so sure, 'di ba, doc, that there's a difficulty, but professionally we cannot diagnose. Only a DevPed can diagnose a child. I'll just read this last question before we continue because this is also a red flag for a 7-year-old. So Mommy Myra said, "Hi Doc, my son is 7 years old. Red flag niya po ay pag may gusto siyang gawin o kunin, hihilahin ka po niya sa kamay papunta sa gusto niyang kunin. Ano po ang pwedeng gawing activity? Thanks." Hand
Okay.
leading instead of talking.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
So definitely a red flag. Again, there are other areas that might need to be explored po na tatanungin namin sa inyo, socialization, learning, development,
Mhm.
behavior. So in your case po, Mami Myra, I would suggest, because 7 years old na rin po, should not be
Yes.
doing the hand leading,
Yes.
pa-assess po for a full developmental evaluation.
Yes, I agree. Doc, for those that since you've already brought it up, no, for diagnosis, and they're going to say, but Doc, it's so hard to get an appointment. Di ba? Which napapangiti si Doc Sheryl kasi totoo 'yon. Mahirap. Kung alam niyo po, ano po para pong unicorn ang DevPed. Kokonti lang po sila. So, while they are waiting, Doc, even if we want to push that they should be going to a DevPed first, but while they're waiting for their assessments, what do you suggest parents should do? Does it depend on the red flag or?
Well, of course, you know your child best, right?
Mhm.
So of course, kung alam nyo na ang weakness is speaking, communicating, you can provide simple home activities to be able to stimulate na the language. Every single day
Mm.
that we do or every activity we have at home, even if hindi formally nag-speech therapy yung bata, we're always talking to each other. Pahiram nga nito, pasa mo nga to sa akin, sarado mo yung pito. Wow, ang ganda niyan. Marami tayong sinasabi. So at
Mhm.
home, parents, please do not underestimate your capacity because you know
Agree.
what your child likes and what your child is, an activity that can hold your child's focus, 'di ba? So choose that activity, follow your child's lead, and
Mhm.
just be there and spend the time singing, talking, going out in nature, walking, and talking about what you see, reading books, a wonderful way of cultivating language development. Sometimes reading doesn't entail teaching them how to read, actually, but just talking about, oh, this is a very nice book. I really like the brown bear. He went up the tree. So you're like, parang binabad natin, no? You're immersing the kid in a language-rich environment in every single activity that they do, even before you sleep, even when you're eating, kahit po diaper change, pwede po rin po natin silang kausapin about it, or maliligo. So, I would say variety of activities can be hands-on, sensory, di ba? Water
Mhm.
playing,
Mhm.
physical activity outside,
Mhm. Mhm.
and of course, the very most important, I think, parang one of the foundations of having good behaviors, of course, is having good structure and routine in your house, right?
Agree,
Having
agree.
good sleep, good sleeping patterns. Number two, good nutrition, right? Eating together as much as you can, at least once
Yeah,
a day. Di ba? I know we're all busy, so
yeah.
sometimes we can't eat together, but make it an effort. Number three, okay, ito talaga controversial or medyo hot topic, the screen time. TVs, phones, iPads, there are guidelines for that any child below the age of 3 should really have zero screen time.
Kakampi mo ako dyan, Doc.
Diba? Mahirap lang po
Makulit ako
talaga.
dyan, makulit.
Yeah,
Alam ko po
so,
mahirap kasi nga po, Doc, ano mo, it's nice that Doc Sheryl suggested things that you can do at home because we know you need to budget some things in your household to be able first to go to a developmental pediatrician and then therapy. So I'm glad that Doc Sheryl suggested things that you can do at home. Pero yung gadget po talaga, ang kulit na namin ni Doc Sheryl. It's really hard, especially if you've already given the gadget and medyo may addiction na. Pero mommy, yung iyak niya, pag binawi mo yung gadget, sulit po yan dun sa improvement na mangyayari
yes.
after mo
Yes.
siya bawiin. Sulit
Correct.
lagi. I cannot discount yung sulit ng mahirap lang po yan sa umpisa, especially pag nabigay nyo na. And we understand, kasi Doc Sheryl, there are some parents who do not naman have a kasambahay or nag-aalaga sa anak or they are left with relatives na of course, it's a very good nanny yung gadget at ang TV. Pero yung kapalit po kasi nun, 'di ba? Short attention span, the
Right.
behavior, hindi po sulit na binigyan niyo po ng gadget. Ako, ayan na, magsesermon na ako sa gadget talaga.
And then magko-comment pa ako dyan, no, Teacher Tina,
Oh,
just to
sige, sige.
piggyback on what you said. Sometimes the behavior concerns that are raised are also triggered by their gadget use because the child,
Correct.
and then of course it can lead, research has proven that it can lead to behavior issues already and also developmental delays because
Mhm.
they have limited movement. They're just sitting down watching on the gadget. They're not
Yes.
exploring. They don't know how to play with the toys. They don't know
Yes.
how to match puzzles, but they can on the iPad. Ganon.
Yeah.
So, limited ang
Yeah.
opportunity. So, I would say really, work on weaning or stopping if
Yes,
possible,
because
no?
sabi ko nga, Doc, may mga activities mas mura pa sa gadget na mas makakabigay ng dexterity with their fine motor skills, 'di ba?
Yeah.
Reading a book times
So many.
100. Oo, ang
Yes.
dami talaga eh. So, sige,
Yes.
let's show some of there was a question about GDD, or this one. This is from Mommy Christine. Hi, Doc. Normal po ba sa 3 years old with GDD na magkaroon ng random outburst of tantrums? Most of the time, hindi ma-pinpoint ang trigger. This happens even when the child is sleeping.
Okay. Thank you, Mommy
GDD
Christine.
is global developmental
Delay.
delay. Yes.
Right. So, if your child is 3 years old po, no, syempre kung globally delayed po siya, which means multiple areas ng development affected, it depends din po kung ano yung developmental age ng anak ninyo. So, is he like a 2-year-old? Is he like a 1-year-old? It depends po, no? I don't know that detail. But, of course, if they're 3 and they have the delays, yes, it is normal po to have random outbursts, or you can
Mm.
expect that actually. I wouldn't be surprised if you tell me that. And there are times we really cannot, know the trigger because they cannot communicate well and express. So the only thing you can do in this case is really, again, going back, if you have a routine, lahat ng ginawa mo naman, nagawa mo, hindi siya kulang sa tulog, baka masakit yung tiyan, may sakit, hindi natin po alam. But you have to be observant if there are things around him that have really caused change or something na nakaapekto sa kanya. Regarding naman po yung even when child is sleeping at a age of maybe 2 to 3, I don't know if this can be, maybe this could be a sleep terror, nighttime terrors when they're crying in their sleep. And that happens around that age. And ang
Yeah.
perception lang natin, baka gutom. So sometimes padedidein. Or bakit siya nagtatantrum, tulog naman siya. Or yung iba, iisipin yung parang nananaginip, pero paggising nila, hindi naman nila maalala yung nangyari, di ba? That can
Right.
be a part of their normal, parang, or I would say, mga sleep concerns in this
Issues,
age
yeah.
group that can still be expected, right? However, I would say that, kung meron pong mga other problems yung bata, like malambot, merong mga seizures or staring episodes, yung
Mm-mm.
parang natutulala, tapos naggaganyan nga po pag natutulog, ang additional ko po siguro masasabi sa inyo is magpakonsulta sa pediatric neurologist. Baka po meron po kasing
Yes,
mga cases na may seizure
yes,
habang tulog.
yes.
So,
Right, right.
hindi ko lang po masabi sa case po ninyo. Pero isa po yun siguro sa maybe point na baka pwede nyo pag-isipan or pag-usapan sa inyong doktor na
Yeah, with global
nakakakilala ng
delay kasi, no, it's multiple domains that are affected.
yes.
So kailangan talaga. Pero Doc, ang suggestion mo ba is for, let's say, kasi spectrum talaga ang learning disability. So we've already talked about ASD, GDD. Kailangan talaga all the time na may kaakibat or there is connected therapy for all the learning disabilities. Meaning,
Well,
if they were diagnosed, automatically there is therapy that is connected with the diagnosis all the time.
well, learning disability has different types. So it really
Mm.
depends on if it's a reading problem. Sometimes it's,
I see.
that's why dyslexia is a very specific reading problem. Or is
Yes.
it reading comprehension issue? Is it a writing difficulty? Is it a mathematic issue? So it really depends on the challenges of the child. Usually, they do have mga specialists, education, like math specialists or reading specialists who may need to help and assist them, especially if the learning gap is quite big, meaning at least
Yes.
2 years or
2
more,
years.
right?
Yung magandang binanggit mo, Doc, si learning gap because there are some students that we have that we ask for. It's like a psych edu test where every skill is assessed by age. And kita mo doon that there are some skills that are, the disparity is very far. And then, but then, as you also mentioned, there are also strengths na lahat, hindi, lahat po rin ng batang may learning disability. They have a certain strength that you can encourage or you can use in order for you to work on their weaknesses.
Correct.
No? So, tama yung sinabi ni Doc na yung therapy fit dun sa needs ng bata. So, it's not one size fits all therapy.
No,
So,
it has to be
okay.
specific and
Very
individualized.
specific.
And
Yes, yes.
normally, the learning disability, you can actually see this more in the older school-aged kids,
Yeah.
they might show signs as early as kindergarten, but it's more
Mm.
apparent or more clear that the child has a learning disability when they're around 8 or 9 years old in grade 2, grade 3.
It's good that you said that, Doc. Why is that? Why is it, especially ADD and ADHD, why the sudden clarity when they're in school, for especially for lower grades?
Well, I think first, no, with learning disability, um, when they're in kinder, they're starting to learn. Kumbaga, they're just learning the foundations of the alphabet, the sounds.
Mm.
They're learning to blend sounds. So in kinder, what you will notice when they have learning issues is sometimes they're hard to recognize letters or
Mm.
remember the sounds of letters. Yung iba naman have a hard time blending sounds. But because they're just in kinder, they can still learn pa. Baka kailangan lang ng konting additional remediation or intervention
Yes,
practice,
yes,
kumbaga.
yes,
But at the
yes.
age of grade 2, when you are really expected to be reading, no, and in grade 3, you're expected to be reading so you can actually learn from what you read, then then it becomes much more clearer na it's really hard for you to learn reading process. That's
Mhm.
a specific to reading. And the same
So
goes
it's
with
the
math.
academic load. Oo, parang the
Yeah,
academic load changes kasi kaya nagiging
correct.
evident eh, no? Mm.
Right. That's with learning. When you mentioned
Yes.
ADD or ADHD, that is mostly a behavioral difficulty where they have trouble focusing. They have trouble finishing their like for
Their
example, they're
tasks.
expected to finish
Mm.
na, yes, 2 to 3 pages na dapat, pero parang hindi natatapos, or they'll come
Mm.
home without anything in their notebook na nakasulat.
Yes, yes,
Ganon.
yes,
And
yes.
usually, the most commonly observed symptom, of course, they're standing up or they're talking to their classmates, bothering the classmates. So these are the symptoms naman of ADHD. So there are really different kinds of developmental and behavioral conditions that
Right,
we cannot
right.
just really discuss in one ano kasi every child can present in with different
Different ways.
symptoms and
Yeah.
concerns. Yes. That's
And
how
and yeah.
that's how the
Yes,
assessment
yes.
goes. It's a holistic talaga. We ask all those
Mhm.
questions.
That's true. And a lot of developmental pediatricians give the school a checklist so that they are also aware of what's happening in school. But what's
Correct.
what's good also, Doc, with what you said is that sa dami ng presentations of attention issues, I would also want to encourage teachers and parents na the child usually is really not misbehaving. It's really because there is less impulse control. Tama ba ako, Doc? Na
Right.
especially if they have ADHD, it's very sad kasi sometimes to label a child na misbehaving,
Right.
naughty,
Right.
makulit, when in fact there is an issue that needs to be addressed
Correct.
because it's a behavioral issue.
Correct. So, which is
Mm.
why when teachers, my advice to you is if you notice there are some red flags of behavioral issues with your students, whatever we mentioned earlier regarding development man or behavior or their academic performance, I would say please be specific about it. For example, when you share it with the parents and you're really worried, no, you have to
Yes.
parang help the parent po have information para pag nagpa-assess po sila sa
Mm.
DepEd, the DepEd,
Yes.
because we will ask, paanong hyperactive? Ganon. Because what might be hyperactive to you, baka hindi naman po talaga. Or
Agree.
minsan po may magsasabi sa akin, hyper po siya. Paano pong hyper? Eh, yung saktong kulit lang po. Okay. So, hindi naman po talaga hyper. Kumbaga, alive lang, no? Makulit.
Oo,
Sakto
oo,
lang.
oo.
Natitiis
Sakto
naman.
lang,
Sakto sa
saks lang,
age.
saks.
Yes.
Oo, oo.
So, we have to be specific. And the same way with the parents. So, detailed experiences. For example, doktora, nag-outing kami. Wala po siyang tako. Tumalon lang po dun sa 10 feet. Iniwan po kami. Dire-diretso siya. Ganyan din po siya sa mga mall. For example, halos masasagasaan na. Minsan, hyper to talaga yung bata. Those are very concrete examples that help us really understand what do you mean by hyper. Kasi, yun po yung isa sa mga tinitingnan din natin is if the child, no, whatever age, is being affected na po, no?
Yes,
When it comes to their
yes, yes.
learning, family functioning, yung everyday safety. Tinuturuan natin, hindi makaupo. Hindi tuloy matuto, ang hirap turuan because let's say may
Tama,
ADHD or hyperactive talaga yung bata,
tama.
short attention span. So, having a description of the
Yes.
exact symptoms really helps the parent understand, coming from the teacher especially, and then also the parent to also share it with the teacher because these behavioral issues and concerns should be observed in at least two settings, meaning school and
Right,
home, no,
right.
before we can make any formal judgment that the child has a
Yes,
problem because
yes.
meron po talagang cases na makulit sa bahay, oo, pero bait-bait sa school or okay siya sa school, no issues,
Mm.
nakakatapos, nakikinig. Magtataka po yung mga parents, bakit sa teacher nakikinig tong batang to? Then in
Bakit
that
sa'min
case,
hindi?
correct. Then in that case, we
Oo.
can say, well, because they're comfortable with you, your mom, your dad,
Yes,
is at
yes.
home,
That's a nice.
right? And they
Yes.
feel comfort with you. So they trust that you
Mhm.
will not judge them for their issues or kung ano man yon.
Yeah,
But it's also maybe a sign that okay, I need to probably review the way I am structuring my child's everyday. Kasi okay siya sa school, kaya niya. I-review din po natin. How are we at home with the child? Do we have structure? Do we set limits properly?
that's a good
Do we
point.
have a routine? So, importante, review din po natin yung sarili natin kasi there are a lot of times we can really do something about it. Yun yung tinatanong mo, Teacher Tina kanina na pag wala pang budget or nag-aantay pa magpa-assess, we
Yes.
also have to think sometimes the child responds to us,
Yes.
right?
That's
And
a
if
good
we
point. That's a
know,
good point.
right, and if we know deep in our hearts that we really have tried very well to set limits, I've stuck to the no gadget rule at least 3 to 4 months, for example. Kasi pagka sinabi natin we are trying, it really means we
Mm-mm.
really tried, not just 1 week. We have to
That's right.
try
I
every
agree.
single day. It's
I
always
agree.
something that is an effort. It's a
Because
conscious
because
effort.
because sayang yung effort natin, 'di ba, Doc? If we're just dealing with an assumption. For example, tapos hindi natin binago everything else in the house. And we are just working on a certain and we think is a misbehavior when in fact it's not. Sometimes it's really just the routines at home,
Right?
changing the activities at home, and it works wonders already. Meron tayong phone-in
Right.
question, Doc, from a teacher from Nest, from Teacher Faye.
Okay.
Mare-recommend nyo ba na i-endorse na sa occupational therapy while waiting for a DevPed assessment? Because even in TikTok, Doc, there are some mothers who, because it's a behavioral issue that they are trying to ask for help for, they went to an OT first. Kasi nga matagal pa bago sila makita ng DevPed. It worked for them. Parang natuwa yung DevPed that, buti ginawa mo to, medyo improvement. But
Mhm.
we're going to ask you that, what can you say about it?
I would say my experience so far, I would actually encourage you if you truly believe you've tried and that you really need the help too, right? Sometimes we
Everything.
as parents, we're clueless also. We don't know. We have to admit that as well.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you've tried and you really don't know the next step and you really think, oh, ang tagal pa ng DevPed and here there's a therapy center who is willing to accept you even without a developmental assessment and is willing to work with you, I don't think that's a bad idea. Because
Yeah.
why would we wait for the official assessment? Baka naman okay na, konting push, konting assistance.
Oo.
So
So,
it really
sinasabi rin
also
ni Doc
depends.
Cheryl na kung pwede niyong i-lessen yung load ng makikita niyang bata, okay lang sa
Hindi
kanya.
naman. I mean, like
Hindi
I said, no?
yeah, and I want to tell teachers, going to a DevPed, it's not, it can be heavy financially for a lot of families. 'Di ba, Doc? Parang we really need to be very observant and know the child well enough or your student well enough to really push for a diagnosis. Or
Right.
yun, yung sabi nga ni Doc na, apart from asking for a diagnosis, teachers, you have the educational background to share what you do in the classroom. Baka pwedeng, yung sinasabi ni Doc na routines, activities, kayang-kaya rin gawin sa bahay. Baka pwede rin nating turuan yung mga magulang. Kasi nga, marami talagang parents na clueless. 'Di ba? We've all gone through that phase, Doc, 'di ba? Na even doctors, I'm sure Doc Cheryl will also say, with
Yeah.
3 boys, there is a point in life na parang, doktor ba talaga ako ba? Why can't I handle all 3 boys?
Yes.
Diba? Even with me, with 3 girls, sometimes I doubt na teacher ba talaga ako for 22 years? Bakit pag anak mo na kasi iba na? Diba? Iba na
Totoo.
yung very subjective ka na, iba na yung expectations. Okay, so na-address na natin yung budgetary constraints and teacher constraints. So let's go through. There are some questions that are very similar to what Doc has already mentioned. Like for example, grabe 50 minutes na pala tayo nagsasalita, Doc. And I'd like to
Yes.
thank the average of 200 viewers who are watching live. Thank you so much for being here. But there are similar questions that I won't be reading anymore that you can replay the live because it's posted on the page. But yung iba namang questions, Doc, is high IQ naman. Let's say they had their child tested. The cognitive ability is high. What do they do in that respect? Do developmental pediatricians also handle children that are academically gifted, for example?
Yeah, actually, that's part of what we also do is, of course, di ba,
Mhm.
merong average development, then there are
Yeah.
those who have delayed development, and then there are those who are advanced. But like we mentioned earlier, yes, giftedness can is a good thing, but there are also areas, that the child might need support. So there might be some children who are gifted, very, very good at learning, but they might
Mhm.
have trouble socializing,
Socializing, yes, yes.
or like maybe learning certain maybe basic tasks like buttoning or things like that,
Yes,
or
yes.
cutting, but they can
Which
really.
is as important, which is as important.
Correct, correct.
Yeah.
So I would
Mm.
say in those kids who are gifted, then we're happy they have an area that they're very good in, but we also need to look at their areas, other areas that may be weaknesses. We're happy if pantay-pantay lahat in the gifted range, but
Yes.
that's really very rare to have a
Mhm.
person who's so perfect naman na sobrang gifted, no, sa lahat. So, I think it's really looking at the child, whether developmentally delayed or normally developing, in a
Holistic
positive,
way.
yeah, yeah, yes,
Yes, yes,
that
yes.
nobody's perfect, but we do appreciate what the child can do, and we need to work on what things that the child needs to learn, no, depending
Yes,
on their ability, kasi if they're delayed,
yes.
i-goals natin yon little by little, so
And
that they
and
can
the
catch up with
and
their peers.
And academic is only one domain, as Doc said. No, there are different domains that a child should still be developing. Sometimes, kasi Doc, we are very fixated with academic accomplishments that
Yes,
we forget that if a child has a very high academic accomplishment and yet she has a hard time socializing or befriending classmates, that's still an issue that we need to work
correct,
on.
correct.
And or if a child naman is sobra naman pong palakaibigan, galing mag-socialize, very sure of himself, ang dali-dali na rin ihahabol ng cognitive, ng academic level. Kasi very mataas ang esteem ng bata sa sarili niya at mataas ang
Correct.
confidence level niya. Ayan. So, thank you for that. Um, there's another question that well, we've gone through the initial questions that I've sent Doctora, but let's see this ano. So I have a 9-year-old na nasa spectrum. She is in grade 4 in public school. Mas nakakatulong po kaya kung nasa SPED ang bata or public school na ang kasama niya ay mga regular kids or sa SPED ang kasama niya din ay nasa spectrum din. Nadidinig ko po kasi sa ibang opinion, mas maganda kung ang kasama niya ay regular kids. So parang ang environment niya ay yung usual. Naka-base po kami dito sa Canada. Salamat po. Ayan. So thank you, Mommy
Okay.
Irene from Canada. So I'll just hide this while Doc answers your
Yeah,
question.
this is kind of a confusing parang question for a lot of confusion, no, for a lot of
Mm-mm.
parents, kasi syempre we know kung may autism better talaga may socialization, but we also have to look at the abilities of your child. It depends if, for example, may mga difficulty siya sa focusing, and if you put her in a regular, let's say, classroom where maraming bata, there's only one teacher, depending on the needs of your child po. So, for her learning process, like for example, tinuturuan siya ng lesson, baka
Mm.
kailangan niya ng special education setup, no? Para
Mm.
mas
Mm.
maturuan siya, mas maintindihan niya. And then
Mm.
later on, she will be provided other opportunities to be in the regular program, maybe not for her specific academic subjects, but maybe for other minor subjects, so
Let's
that
say
she has
PE or
inclusion.
art,
Correct. But
yung
it really
konting load.
depends. Correct. And then there are some kids kasi who have autism, let's say, who have some aggressive behaviors, um,
Mm.
or irritable, or they have
Mm.
random outbursts, for example, they stand up, and sometimes it really
Yes,
disrupts the whole class. And also
correct.
the child himself, hindi na po nagbe-benefit. Kahit nasa regular class siya, hindi naman siya natututo doon. In
Right,
fact,
right.
nagkakaroon lalo siya ng behavior issue, maybe it's too loud, ganon, then there are certain reasons po why the child will need to be in a special education program where it's smaller, more targeted. Ang reason para matuto yung bata. Because we're often scared to hear the word SPED. But we have to understand
Yes.
that special education is a different type of teaching process to a child who has difficulty learning or attending para
Yes.
maturuan nga po yung bata. Kahit gusto natin syempre nasa regular lahat, pero kung hindi rin po
Yes.
matututo yung bata, I've had a mom who really pushed for her child to go to regular school. She was a shadow for her child and she could see from there and understand, hindi talaga po kaya ng anak ko. Siya na ang nakaintindi na kaya po pala
Tama,
hindi po
tama.
siya pwede
That's a good
doon.
example. That's a good example, Doc.
Di
Because
ba?
sometimes, nag-e-explain rin ang teacher, nag-e-explain rin ang DevPed, and some parents really need to see. You're not really just comparing your child, but it's a spectrum kasi. It's really a case-to-case basis, no, Doc, na
Yeah,
kunyari, you have let's say, you can't just say, oh, my nephew also has ASD, this worked for him, it might work for my child, which
correct.
is why we need to work with professionals in terms of a holistic way of dealing with your particular child,
Correct.
as Doc also said.
And again, always think what is best for your child. Diba?
Yes, yes.
Kasi nagbe-benefit ba siya? Nasa school siya, nakikisocialize siya sa regular nga ba?
Mm-mm.
Pero hindi siya nagpo-progress sa learning. Paano kaya yun?
For
So,
example, merong comment dito, Doc, na Mommy Janet na lang homeschooled her child because that was what she believed is good for him and it worked for him. So, sa kanya, nag-work po ito. He finds traditional school monotonous and non-progressing according to him. He always sleeps in his class and daydreams, but always gets high grades. Ngayon, alam mo, maganda tong sinabi ni Mommy Janet, Doktora. Parang, there are some children with special needs, and I'm wrapping this up because I think this is the last question. There are some children with ASD that appear, and that's why parents have a hard time accepting the ASD, that appear to have very good academic levels because they are fixated, meaning they can memorize things, and they appear to, and they can get high grades. They know how to ano the system, di ba? Kasi nakakasagot sila, especially in a traditional school where answers are the most important thing. If you can answer a test well, then you are doing well. Diba? And it can still be ASD.
definitely.
Yes.
And for
Tama,
those
tama.
kids, if they're doing okay in a regular classroom, like a high-functioning person with autism who can speak well and learn, although socialization is a little bit of a challenge, then regular education would probably really be the right setup for that child. But I would
Yeah.
say, it really depends on the child's abilities and the child's case. So, it's individualized po. Kaya confused. Kasi may mga ASD nasa regular. May ASD nasa special education.
Yes,
So,
yes. It doesn't
we
mean
have to
that your
understand.
child is any better or any less.
Yes.
Ah,
That's why,
mhm.
let us not, compare.
But Doc, as my last question to you before you address everyone we're here, and you can still post comments and we'll go back to the questions, no? From your experience, has this lockdown or the sun, them going back to face-to-face school, ano yung nakikita mong evident effect that may confuse a lot of families with regards to their children having special needs?
First and
Especially the
foremost,
young people. Yeah, the young people.
yes, the young ones who are born in the pandemic, gano'n, no? Na never
Yeah,
talagang nakalabas ng 2 years.
yeah.
A lot of them think that it's their fault. Or a lot of them think because during the lockdown, walang magawa sa bahay, hindi tayo makalabas, screen time, no? Or they
Mm,
think kasi only child. Things like that,
mm,
no? So, I would say, although those can be parang mga factors, they are not parang real reasons for us to think that this is the reason why, the pandemic is the reason why the child is truly, truly delayed in that sense.
mm,
Some parents worry kasi only child, walang kalaro. But always remember, you are your child's first friend. And so, even if hindi nakalabas talaga yung bata, for example,
I agree.
di ba, or nakapag-gadget ng kahit konti or na-expose, but it's really home stimulation. That's important. And we have to start with being more proactive, in being more involved in our child's lives as much as we can, as much as our time
Mhm.
permits, which is why I say
Mhm.
take advantage of the routines, the eating, the feeding, the
Yeah,
bathing,
yeah,
kasi we do that multiple times a day. And
yeah.
so I would say, for those parents na feeling nila sila yung may kasalanan or hindi nila nagkamali sila, yan yung mga nagkamali po ako, kasalanan ko po, yung mga usual nilang sinasabi.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
I don't think there's really somebody who's, gusto mong gawin yon. I mean, it's not intentional if if that happened. I'm sure we all have our different circumstances, iba-ibang
Mm.
lifestyles
Mm.
natin that can
Mm.
also sometimes affect the way we make decisions or how we interact with our
Saka
kids.
the fact that you're here in the live, it means you want to be a better parent. You want to listen to Doc
Correct.
Cheryl, you want to listen to Teacher Tina, you want
Yes.
learn things. Before Doc Cheryl says her clinic details, it's nice that Teacher Alpha is now is a public school teacher, but she was a teacher in Nest, and ito lang po yung sinishare niya na public school teacher po siya sa QC para po sa mga parents na nakatira sa QC na interesado sa libreng developmental assessment ng kanilang anak. Meron pong ganitong serbisyo ang QC Kabahagi Center for Children with Disabilities. Ang Kabahagi Center for Children with Disabilities ay may mga libreng serbisyo katulad ng doctor assessment at free therapy. So yung sa mga teachers na gustong ipa-assess ang kanilang mga estudyante, the comment of Teacher Alpha is still here on the page. So thank you, Teacher Alpha. So Doc, where can they find you if they want to see? And I hope they see you.
I have a clinic at St. Luke's, Quezon City, and you can contact our clinic number for
Yeah,
inquiries or
I put that on the
appointments.
post. Yeah. Mhm.
Right. So for questions how to make an appointment, ang advice ko po is definitely, call different clinics
Mhm.
because if you feel it really something that you really need help with, yun lang
Yes.
po talaga, there is no sudden, no? Merong occasional maswerte, nakakasingit talaga kasi biglang may nag-cancel and suddenly you're available. That's really
Yeah.
serendipitous moment. That's like a
Yes.
blessing
Take
na.
it. Take that opportunity
Correct.
right away.
Correct. But of course, I would say there's really some patience, level of patience needed to be able to finally have
Get.
that appointment.
Yes.
Oo.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
but in the meantime, we can always still do something about it. But at the end of the day, whatever challenges that you're facing with your child, I'd say patience pa rin po talaga and love. No, never
Yes.
ending patience and love is the one thing that will really makakatawid sa inyong mga paghihirap or mga concerns with your child.
And as Doc Cheryl said, parents, you are the influencers, the most important influencer and advocate of your child. You know your child best. And so, if you know that there is something that you can change at home while waiting, let's say, for a developmental pediatrician, you can do it. And Doctora is already saying you can do it. There's YouTube, there's Facebook. You can get a lot of information, but researched information po sana kasi marami rin pong misinformation online. I'd like to thank Doc Cheryl. Doc, I really appreciate you being with us today. I'm sure the followers of the page also appreciated. Sana magkita tayo ng live at magkwentuhan very
Yes,
soon.
yes. Thank you so much, teacher,
Thanks so
for having
much.
me here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you po sa
Thank you,
lahat.
everyone. I'll just end the stream, Doc, and then we can still talk afterwards. Thank you, everybody.